On my wedding night, just as I was about to step into my new life, my sister-in-law stormed in, eyes blazing with fury. "Where's my diamond necklace?" she demanded. The room fell silent. I hadn't even unpacked yet. She was certain I had stolen it, but something in her smirk told me this wasn't about the necklace. It was about destroying me before I even began. The moment should have been perfect. The night I had dreamed of my entire life. The start of my forever. I had just stepped into our honeymoon suite, still breathless from the whirlwind of the reception. My white gown felt heavier now, the layers of lace and tulle dragging slightly against the floor. My cheeks ached from smiling all evening, my heart pounding with a mix of exhaustion and joy. This was it, the beginning of my new life. Then the door burst open. "Where's my diamond necklace?" Claw's voice sliced through the air like a blade. I froze, everyone did. The room fell into an eerie silence, the kind that made my skin crawl. My fingers gripped the edge of my veil, as if holding on to it could anchor me to reality. Claire stood at the entrance, her emerald green dress shimmering under the chandelier glow. Her eyes filled with fury, scanned the room before landing directly on me, my new husband. Jake stiffened beside me, his gaze flickering between us. "I don't understand," I stammered, blinking rapidly. "What necklace?" Claire scoffed, stepping forward. "Don't play dumb, my diamond necklace, the one I wore to the wedding. It's gone." She narrowed her eyes. "And the only new person in this house is you." A sharp gasp came from Jake's mother, who stood by the dresser, folding a silk shawl. "Are you accusing my wife of stealing?" Jake's voice was firm, but there was something in his tone. Hesitation. Claire folded her arms. "I'm not accusing, I'm stating facts." My stomach churned. I hadn't even unpacked yet. My suitcase was still zipped shut in the corner of the room. How could she even suggest such a thing? I turned to Jake, expecting him to laugh at the absurdity of it all, to stand by my side to defend me. But he remained frozen, his hands clenched into fists. "Something was wrong. I don't have your necklace," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Why would I?" "Then you won't mind if I check your bags?" Claire's smirk deepened, her polished nails tapping against her wrist. A chill ran down my spine. She was so confident, so sure, and that's when it hit me. This wasn't about a necklace. This was about me, about making sure I never truly belonged, about planting a seed of doubt on the very night I was supposed to become part of their family. "I do mind," I snapped, stepping back. "This is ridiculous. I won't let you." Jake's voice interrupted. "Just let her check. Babe, if you didn't take it, there's nothing to worry about." I turned to him so fast my vision blurred. "Are you seriously entertaining this?" My chest tightened. "You think I'd steal from your sister on our wedding night?" His jaw tensed. "I don't think anything. But if this clears everything up, then why not?" The betrayal stung more than I expected. He should have shut this down. The moment CLA opened her mouth. Instead, he was siding with her. CLA didn't wait for my response. She tore across the room and yanked my suitcase off the floor with a dramatic flair. She unzipped it and flung it open. My neatly packed clothes spilled onto the carpet. My heart pounded as she dug through the layers of fabric, tossing aside my honeymoon outfits as if they were nothing. Then she gasped. My breath hitched. Claire lifted her hand, and dangling from her fingers was the missing diamond necklace. A suffocating silence fell over the room. Jake's mother's face darkened. The bridesmaids who had lingered near the door exchanged wary glances. Jake's entire body tensed beside me, my world tilted. It wasn't possible I hadn't touched that necklace. I had barely touched my suitcase since we arrived. My mind scrambled for answers, searching for a reasonable explanation. But deep down, I already knew this was a setup. CLA had planted it. I looked up, locking eyes with her. There was something lurking beneath her fake shock satisfaction. She wanted this. She wanted me to be humiliated. Jake exhaled sharply. He turned to me, his expression unreadable. "I don't understand." My heart hammered against my ribs because I didn't take it. My voice came out, hoarse, the weight of the moment pressing down on me. Claire let out a dramatic sigh. "Then how did it end up in your bag?" He turned to Jake. "You saw me wearing it at the wedding. Now here it is with her." I couldn't breathe. Jake's mother shook her head. disappointment flickering in her eyes. I don't want to believe this. But she trailed off, crossing her arms. I whipped my head toward Jake, pleading silently for him to see through this, for him to fight for me, for us, but he hesitated. His silence said everything. My throat tightened. CLA had won. She had created the perfect storm of doubt, and Jake, my husband, was letting it swallow me. Whole tears burned the back of my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I would not give CLA the satisfaction. A shaky breath escaped my lips. You actually think I did this? Jake looked down, my heart shattered. Shrugged, slipping the necklace into her palm. I guess we'll never know. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my skin. This wasn't over. This wasn't the end. CLA wanted to ruin my wedding night, wanted to turn my own husband against me, wanted to strip me of my dignity. She had no idea who she was dealing with, because if she thought she'd won, she was wrong. I wasn't going to let this go. I was going to make sure she regretted ever trying to destroy me. I walked out of that room with my dignity intact, but inside I was crumbling, the weight of betrayal pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. My wedding night had turned into a nightmare, a spectacle orchestrated by Claire with Jake as her silent accomplice. And the worst part, I had walked into this marriage thinking I was loved. I had spent years believing Jake was different, that despite his family's sharp whispers and Kalag's constant need to control everything, he was on my side. But the moment it mattered, when I needed him to stand beside me, he hesitated. That hesitation was more painful than the accusation itself. I stepped into the dimly lit hallway, my heart pounding as I moved toward the guest room where my bridesmaids were gathered. They had seen what happened. They had heard Claw's voice strip, with false concern, watched as she unearthed the necklace like a magician revealing a trick. And they had seen Jake silence one of them. Hurried toward me. Are you okay? Her voice was hushed, but I could hear the anger beneath it. I swallowed hard, nodding, I'm fine. Why, I was anything but fine. Nah. Hesitated, then pulled out her phone. I recorded it. My eyes snapped to hers. What? The moment Claire opened your bag, she said. Pressing play. The video was shaky but clear enough. It showed Kayla's hand slipping into my suitcase, but before she even pulled out the necklace, there was a brief second, just a flicker, where her smirk appeared a smirk. She quickly wiped away as she gasped in fake shock. I clenched my jaw. This was proof that it had been a setup from the start. But that wasn't what truly shattered me. The next part of the video caught something I hadn't noticed before in the corner of the frame. Jake stood frozen, his eyes locked on Claire, and then just for a second he nodded. I felt my stomach drop. Did you see that? Nah, asked her voice sharp with realization. I couldn't answer. I was too busy replaying the moment in my head. Jake had known he had seen CLA plant that necklace, and instead of stopping her, instead of defending me, he had let it happen. He had chosen his sister over me. My hands shook as I took the phone, watching it again, hoping, praying that I was imagining things, but no. The nod was there, subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. I had married a man who would let me be humiliated to protect his family's image. My skin burned with the weight of it all. The past few months flashed through my mind, moments I had dismissed as minor red flags, now glowing like warning signs. I had foolishly ignored the way CLA had always been involved in our decisions, the way Jake had brushed off my concerns, telling me to just let it go whenever she crossed a line, the way his mother had made it clear in subtle but sharp ways that I would never truly belong. And now I saw it for what it was. My perfect life had been nothing more than an illusion. I let out a shaky breath, handing the phone back to Na. Send that to me, she nodded. What are you going to do? I didn't answer because at that moment, I didn't know. All I knew was that I couldn't stay. But walking away wouldn't be enough. I needed them to feel what I was feeling. I needed Jake to understand what it meant to lose something you thought was yours. Forever, I had walked into this marriage believing I had found love instead. I had walked into a trap, but they had made a mistake. They thought I would cry, that I would quietly fade away, shamed and broken. They and broken. Didn't know me at all. I turned back toward the hallway, my mind racing. If this was how they wanted to play, I would give them a game they'd never forget, because if Claire wanted me out of her family, then I would leave. But I would make sure she took my place in the scandal before I was gone. As I stood in the dim hallway gripping Nina's phone like it was my lifeline, a new kind of clarity settled over me. My wedding night had been hijacked, not just by Claire, but by the entire illusion I had foolishly bought into. I wasn't walking into a marriage. I had been absorbed into a family that saw me as an outsider, a problem to be dealt with rather than a person to be embraced. And the truth was, the signs had been there all along. The wedding, the day that was supposed to be mine, had never really been about me. I thought back to the months leading up to it, the endless planning that had felt more like a battle than a celebration. Every decision I made had been questioned, overturned, or outright ignored by Jake's family. My dress. Claire had accidentally sent the wrong measurements to the boutique, forcing me to settle for a gown that wasn't what I had envisioned the venue. Jake's mother had insisted on hosting it at their estate, instead of the place I had originally chosen. Claiming it was tradition, even the guest list had been altered. My side of the family reduced to a small fraction, while Jake's relatives took over the seating chart. And through it all, Jake had stood in the background, promising me it would all be worth it. "You be my wife at the end of the day," he had whispered to me one evening when I had been on the verge of calling off the entire thing. "That's all that matters." But now, as I replayed that moment in my head, I saw it differently. He hadn't been telling me everything would be okay. He had been telling me to give in to let his family have their way. Because in his mind, my happiness had never been a priority. I swallowed the bitterness rising in my throat. My wedding had been hijacked, and I had let it happen. I had been so desperate to be accepted, to be loved, that I had ignored the way CLA had looked at me when I walked down the aisle, as if I were a nuisance rather than a bride. I had smiled through gritted teeth when she made a passive-aggressive toast calling me the newest addition to our family. Instead of welcoming me as Jake's wife, I had pretended not to notice the way Jake's mother had barely spoken to me the entire evening, choosing instead to entertain their family friends as if I didn't exist. And worst of all, I had ignored the whispers. I had heard them faint but unmistakable as I passed by clusters of guests who had turned away just a little too quickly. Are they really in love? She doesn't seem like the right fit for him. Well, you know how these things go. Family always wins in the end. At the time, I had dismissed them as meaningless gossip, but now I understood I had never been meant to be here. Claire had made sure of that, and Jake, whether he had realized it or not, had let it happen. A deep sense of humiliation twisted inside me. But beneath it, something stronger began to rise, bigger. Not the fleeting kind that comes and goes like a passing storm. This was something deeper, something colder. This was resolve. I had spent months letting them take things from me, my choices, my voice, my dignity. But I wasn't going to let them take my revenge. I wasn't going to be the woman who left quietly, head bowed in shame. I wasn't going to let CLA walk away from this unscathed, smug in the belief that she had successfully erased me from their family before I had even had the chance to belong. If Claire wanted to humiliate me on my wedding night, then I was going to make sure she remembered this night for the rest of her life. Because this wasn't just my wedding, it was about to become hers too, and she had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? My wedding, the day that was supposed to mark the beginning of my happily ever after, had turned into a calculated takedown. CLA had orchestrated every detail. And Jake, my husband, had allowed it to happen. The weight of betrayal pressed heavily on my chest, but underneath it, something stronger burned, determined. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, my wedding gown pulled around me like a reminder of the farce I had just endured. My fingers clenched the edge of the sheets, knuckles turning white. CLA had always been controlling, but this was something else. It wasn't just about undermining me, it was about destroying me. The question noted me. Why had she gone so far? Why had she needed to paint me as a liar, a thief? I reached for my phone, opening the video. Na had sent the proof, was right there, Claire planting the necklace, Jake seeing it and saying nothing. My heart pounded as I replayed it, each frame searing itself into my mind. I had two choices. I could walk away, let them win, let them have their little victory, or I could find out why CLA was so desperate to ruin me and use that truth against her. My grip tightened around the phone. I chose the latter the next morning. I didn't pack my things. I didn't storm out in tears or make some dramatic exit that would have given them exactly what they wanted. Instead, I dressed carefully, slipping into a simple but elegant dress that made me feel composed. Untouchable, I stepped out of the suite, my chin high, my pulse steady. The wedding may have been a disaster, but I refused to let them see me broken downstairs. The remnants of the reception still lingered. Champagne glasses half full, the scent of roses fading. Conversations hushed as guests slowly checked out. I spotted at the far end of the lounge, laughing over coffee with a few relatives. The picture of ease, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just spent the night trying to ruin me. I walked past her without a word, heading straight for the one person who could give me the answers I needed. Jake's mother, she was seated near the fireplace, stirring her tea, absently lost in thought. When she saw me approaching, her expression flickered something between discomfort and curiosity. I sat down across from her, meeting her gaze. "Can I ask you something?" She hesitated but nodded. "Why does CLA hate me so much?" My voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the weight of the question. She let out a slow breath, setting her spoon down. CLA has always been protective of Jake. Protective, that was a carefully chosen word. Protective or possessive, I countered, her lips pressed together. She's always had strong opinions, especially when it comes to family matters. Matters family. Another carefully chosen word. A polite way of reminding me that, despite the ring on my finger, I wasn't truly one of them. I leaned forward slightly so she tried to frame me on my wedding night, and Jake let it happen in silence. A muscle in her jaw tensed. She picked up her tea again, taking a long sip before speaking. "You were never supposed to marry Jake." My stomach turned to ice. She continued, her voice quieter. "CLA always had someone else in mind for him, someone from a family more aligned with ours, a perfect match, a predetermined future, and I had ruined it." Realization hit me like a tidal wave. CLA hadn't just disliked me, she had been waiting for me to fail. And when I didn't, she decided to push me out herself. I sat back, my breath slow and controlled. Does Jake know? She didn't answer. He didn't have to. The setup wasn't just Claire's doing. Jake had known. Maybe not every detail, but enough. And he had let it happen as deep down. Maybe he agreed the betrayal cut even deeper now. Not just CLA's scheme, but Jake's compliance. I stood up, smoothing my dress. "Thank you for your honesty." She didn't stop me as I walked away. I found Jake in the garden, standing by the fountain, staring at the water, as if it held the answers he couldn't find. When he saw me, relief flickered across his face, like he had convinced himself that maybe, just maybe, I'd let this all go. I stopped a few feet away, watching him, letting the silence settle, letting him feel it. "Did you know?" Finally asked, his throat bobbed. "Know what?" I tilted my head slightly, that Claire was planning this, that she never wanted me here. He exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Babe, it's not like that, don't." My voice was sharp enough to make him flinch. "Don't lie to me," he sighed, rubbing his face. I didn't know she'd go that far, but I thought she'd just make things difficult, not frame me. My laugh was bitter. "Shake. She planted evidence to make me look like a thief, and you stood there, you let it happen." His shoulders slumped. I was caught off guard. I didn't know what to do. I took a slow step closer. "Yes, you did. You could have stopped it. You could have defended me, but you didn't." Guilt flashed across his face. I didn't want to make a scene. My stomach ched, right? Because Claw's comfort mattered more than my dignity. Silence. I stared at the man I had promised to spend my life with, and for the first time I saw him clearly. Not as the charming, kind person I had fallen in love with, but as someone who had chosen his family over me every single time. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Tell me the truth, Jake. If CLA had told you to call off the wedding, would you have?" His lips parted, but no words came, and that was my answer. A strange sense of calm washed over me. I had spent so much time trying to fit into his world, to prove I was worthy of standing beside him, but the truth was, I had never been standing beside him at all. I had been standing alone. I reached into my pocket, pulling out my wedding ring. The weight of it felt foreign, now unfamiliar. I held it out to him. His eyes widened. Wait, no, my voice was steady. This wasn't a marriage, Jake. It was a mistake. I let the ring drop into his palm, and then without another word, I turned and walked away. But I wasn't done yet. Claire had played her game well, but I was about to show her that she had underestimated me, because this wasn't just about walking away. This was about making sure they never forgot what they had done, and I was just getting started. I walked out of that garden feeling weightless. The ring, once a symbol of forever, no longer felt like a shackle around my finger. It had dropped into Jake's palm like a final punctuation mark to a story I refused to let define me. But as I moved through the halls of the estate, past the remnants of my own wedding celebration, the weight of what had happened settled into something sharper. He had let me down. CLA had humiliated me, but this wasn't just about them anymore. This was about me for too long. I had let things slide, let people walk over me, let Claire manipulate situations to fit her narrative. I had convinced myself that being the bigger person meant walking away with dignity. But dignity didn't erase betrayal. It didn't undo the humiliation I had suffered in front of all those guests, in front of my own family. It didn't fix the way CLA had smirked as she framed me, or the way Jake had hesitated when it mattered most. I wasn't about to leave. Quietly, CLA wanted me gone, and she had gotten what she wanted. But I was going to make sure she regretted ever underestimating me if she thought I was just going to disappear and lick my wounds in silence. She had no idea who she was dealing with. I pulled out my phone and dialed. Nah, she picked up on the first ring. Tell me you're not leaving without a fight, she said. Before I could even speak, I exhaled slowly. Oh, I'm fighting back. I could hear the grin in her voice. That's what I wanted to hear. What's the plan? I glanced back at the estate, the towering symbol of the family. I had been so eager to marry into a family that had never truly welcomed me, but I knew them now. Their weaknesses, their secrets, and I knew exactly where to strike first, I said. We going to make sure everyone knows exactly what CLA did. The video Nina had recorded would be my weapon. It was clear evidence of CLA, planting the necklace, manipulating the situation to make me look guilty. But it wasn't just about proving my innocence anymore. It was about taking everything Claire valued: her reputation, her standing in the family, the control she wielded over Jake, and everyone else. I wouldn't just expose her, I would ruin her. And then I would make sure Jake felt what it was like to lose something he had taken for granted. CLA had framed me. Jake had let her, and now they were both going to pay. I left the estate with my head held high, but my mind was already 3 steps ahead, weaving a plan so sharp it would leave them reeling. They had tried to bury me now. I was going to show them that I wasn't the one they should have feared. The first move was simple. The video had to be seen, but not just by a handful of people, by everyone who mattered. I met Na at a small cafe downtown where she handed me her phone. I've already sent it to you, she said, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. What's next? I opened the file, watching the footage again. Claire's smug expression the moment she slipped the necklace into my bag. The second, Jake nodded in silent compliance. I looked up, my jaw tightening. We leak it, narc. Grin widened to hoo to everyone, and that's exactly what we did. Within hours, the video was sent to key guests from the wedding. It was posted in a private group where members of Jake's family often shared photos and updates. It was forwarded to relatives, whispered about in group chats, and soon it started spreading like wildfire. The reactions were immediate disbelief. Some refused to believe it at first, but the evidence was undeniable. CLA had set me up. Jake had let her. And then the cracks in their perfect world began to show. The first call came from Jake. I let it go to voicemail. The second came an hour later. Then a text. Jake, we need to talk. I ignored it. Then Claire called CLA. What the hell did you do? I smirked, typing back a single response. Me expose the truth. You should try it sometime. I could almost hear her screeching on the other end of the line. But I wasn't done yet. Claire had spent years manipulating situations, twisting reality to fit her version of event. But now she was losing control. The family that had once defended her was starting to question things. The relatives who had looked at me with suspicion the night before were now turning their judgmental gazes toward her. And the best part, her own mother was furious. By the evening, I got a message from one of Jake's cousins, someone who had never particularly liked me, but also wasn't blind to the truth. Cousin Claire's mom is livid. She's demanding answers. She doesn't like scandals. I sat back sipping my coffee. Of course she didn't. CLA had made one fatal mistake. She had framed me, assuming I would leave quietly, assuming I wouldn't fight back, but she had forgotten one important thing. Her family cared about their reputation more than anything, and now that reputation was stained. Her mother, the woman who had barely acknowledged me throughout my engagement, was now caught in the crossfire of her daughter's reckless actions, and if I knew anything about her, it was that she didn't tolerate mistakes. CLA had built her world on control. Now that control was slipping through her fingers. I leaned back in my chair, watching the messages roll in. The whispers were turning into conversations. The conversations into arguments. Claire wasn't the golden child anymore. She was a liability. And I had barely even started. By the next morning, the full fallout had begun. CLA's mother had called for a family meeting, one I obviously wasn't invited to, but that didn't matter because I already knew what was happening behind closed doors. CLA was being forced to explain herself. Jake was being questioned, and the people who had so easily believed I was capable of stealing were now struggling to process the fact that their own had orchestrated the entire thing. Jake tried calling again, then texting Jake. I didn't know it would go that far. I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. You did know, you just didn't care enough to stop it. He didn't reply after that, and I didn't need him to, because this wasn't just about what they had done. It was about making sure they never did it to anyone else again, and I wasn't finished yet. Claire thought she had won when she framed me, but the real game had only just begun. The fallout was happening faster than I had expected. The whispers had turned into outright confrontations. Jake had stopped calling. CLA had gone silent. And their mother, once the composed and untouchable matriarch, was now scrambling to control the damage. But I knew it wasn't enough, not yet. Claire had spent years pulling strings, controlling narratives, and making sure she was always seen as the untouchable golden child. She had orchestrated my downfall with such ease because she believed she was invincible. It was time to prove her wrong. I watched as the family meeting unfolded through secondhand updates. A cousin messaged me to say Claire had been forced to explain herself. Another relative, one who had never been particularly warm toward me, confessed that their mother had been furious when she saw the video. They're turning on her. The message read, she's panicking good, but something still wasn't sitting right with me. I had spent days exposing Claire, watching her perfect image unravel, and yet I knew. CLA, she wasn't the type to accept defeat. She wouldn't just let this happen to her without a fight. She was going to retaliate. The only question was how. Then I got a call. I wasn't expecting it. Wasn't from Jake, not from Claire, not even from her mother. It was from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. I hesitated before answering. Hello. A familiar voice filled my ear. I need to warn you. I gripped the phone tighter, my stomach knotting wet. There was a pause. Then CLA isn't done. She's setting you up again. My breath hitched. What do you mean? I mean, she's flipping the story. She's telling everyone you set her up, that the video was fake, that you edited it to make her look guilty. I swallowed hard, my pulse spiking. I had expected retaliation, but this was another level. She's saying you did it for sympathy, that you wanted to humiliate her because you were embarrassed that Jake was going to leave you anyway. A cold wave washed over me. I had underestimated just how far CLA was willing to go. She's convincing them that you wanted revenge from the start, the voice continued. That's why you recorded everything. That's why the video exists. I let out a slow breath, trying to steady myself. Who believes her? There was a pause. Enough people. I clenched my jaw. Per is good, he was smart. She knew how to manipulate emotions, how to twist the truth just enough to plant doubt, and worse, she still had influence over Jake. If he backed her story even for a second, it could turn the tables against me. I needed to act fast. I hung up my mind. Racing, this wasn't over. If Claire wanted a war, I would give her one. I reached out to, I need you to do something for me. She answered immediately. I'm already ahead of you. I heard what? She's saying. I exhaled sharply, and I have something that'll make sure she never recovers from this. My heart pounded. What PA? Then I wasn't just recording the moment she planted the necklace. I recorded what she said before that. My grip on the phone tightened. What do you mean? Narc voice was smug. I mean, I caught her talking about it before she did it. She literally said she was going to teach you a lesson right before slipping the necklace into your bag. She didn't know I was recording. I nearly dropped the phone. This was it. This was the final blow. Send it to me, I said, my voice steady. Already did. Nah, replied. I hope you destroy her. I hung up and opened the file. My heart raced as I pressed play. The footage was dark, blurry, but the audio was crystal clear. CLA's voice, Ahmed, she never see it coming, she said, laughing, and when they find it in her bag, they'll all turn against her. She won't have anyone left. Another voice, one of her friends, giggled. What if she denies it? CLA scoffed. It won't matter. My family always believes me, she done. I stared at the screen, my fingers trembling. This wasn't just proof, this was the end of Kaylah's reign. She had sealed her own fate with her arrogance, and now I was going to make sure everyone heard it. I wasted no time. The video was uploaded, sent to the same group chats, the same social circles where CLA had tried to flip the story within minutes. The reaction was explosive. Messages flooded in disbelief. Outraged CLA had been caught, not just in her lies, but in the act of planning them, and this time there was no coming back. Jake's mother called me. I let it go to voicemail. Then Jake himself tried again. I blocked his number. CLA, she didn't call, she didn't text. She vanished. By the next morning, I got another update. CLA had been disowned. Her mother had kicked her out of the estate. She had lost the family's trust, her influence. Everything she had spent years making sure she was the perfect daughter, the favorite, the one who could do no wrong. No, he was nothing. I sat back. Breathing deeply, it was over. CLA had tried to ruin me, but in the end, she had only destroyed herself. I had won, and I had never felt more free. CLA had built her entire life around control. Control over her family, over Jake, over the way people perceived her. But now she had lost it all. The whispers turned into full-blown conversations. The judgmental glances that once had been directed at me now fell squarely on her. The woman who had always prided herself on being untouchable had been exposed in the most brutal way possible, and I had done it without ever having to lie. The news spread like wildfire through their social circles. Claire had been caught, her manipulations laid bare for everyone to see. The golden daughter, the family's pride, had been disowned by her own mother. The irony wasn't lost on me. She had spent all this time trying to get me cast out. But in the end, she had been the one exiled. But I knew CLA well enough to know she wouldn't go down without a fight. He had always been a strategist, someone who played the long game. She had tried to flip the story once before, and now that she had lost everything, I knew she would be desperate. That was the most dangerous version of CLA, the one with nothing left to lose. So I waited, and sure enough, she made her move a few days after her exile. I received a message from an unknown number. CLA, you think you won. I smirked, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I don't think I know. She read it immediately, but instead of responding, she called. I let it ring. Then she texted again. CLA, I have nothing left because of you. I tilted my head at the screen. She had spent so much time trying to ruin me, but now she wanted me to feel guilty. Me, no. CLA, you have nothing left because of you. Another call this time. I picked up. Her voice was raw, but not with remorse, with anger. You don't understand what you've done. I leaned back in my chair. Oh, I think I understand perfectly. You ruined my life, she spat. I laughed, the sound surprising even myself. You tried to ruin mine. First, I was protecting my family. My grip on the phone tightened. No, you were protecting yourself. You didn't care about Jake. You didn't care about your mother. You cared about making sure I never belonged. And you lost. There was silence on the other end for a moment. I thought she had hung up, but then she spoke, her voice softer. You really think this is over? Something in her tone made my skin prickle. CLA was down, but she wasn't out. Jake still loves me, she continued. And no matter what you do, he's never going to love you the way he loves this family. I exhaled through my nose. A calm settling over me, CLA. I don't need Jake to love me. I needed him to respect me, and he couldn't even do that, she scoffed. So what, you're just walking away? I smiled, though she couldn't see it. No, I'm making sure you never forget what happens when you cross the wrong person. She let out a bitter laugh. And how do you plan to do that? I've already lost everything. I tapped my fingers against the desk, thinking CLA was right. She had lost her home, her family's trust, and her standing. But that wasn't enough. She had spent years building her influence, making connections, ensuring that no matter what happened, she always had something to fall back on. That was what I needed to take next. You know, I said slowly, it's funny you spent so much time trying to prove you were better than me, that you were above me. No, you're calling me for help. She inhaled sharply. I don't need your help. Then why are you still talking to me? Silence. I let it stretch between us, letting her feel it. Letting her sit in it. Claire had spent so much time trying to orchestrate my downfall. But she had never once considered what would happen if she failed. She had burned too many bridges, played too many games, and now she had nowhere left to go. She finally spoke, her voice shaking. What do you want? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I want you to suffer the way you made me suffer. I want you to feel helpless the way I felt when you framed me in front of everyone I cared about. She let out a ragged breath. I already do, I tilted my head. No, CLA, you don't, but you will. Then I hung up and I got to work. I wasn't done yet. Claire still had some connections. People who hadn't fully turned on her yet. I needed to make sure she had nothing left. I started by reaching out to those very people, subtly feeding them the truth about CLA's deception. Word spread quickly. Within a week, Claire had lost job opportunities, social invitations, and even the trust of those outside her family. She had spent so much time crafting a perfect image, and now it was crumbling, then the final blow. Claire had always prided herself on her charity work, her community involvement. It was her last standing shield, the one thing that kept her in high regard, so I made sure the right people saw the videos. The deception, the charity board quietly removed her from her position. She had nothing left, and for the first time in her life, CLA was truly alone. Jake tried. Reaching out again, he wanted to talk to explain, but I didn't need his explanations. I already knew the truth. He had never been strong enough to stand against CLA, and I didn't need a man who hesitated when it mattered most. So I ignored him instead. I focused on what mattered: myself, my freedom, my peace. Claire had tried to ruin me, but in the end she had only destroyed herself. And the best part, she had done it with her own words. CLA had spent years crafting an image of perfection, positioning herself as the one in control, the one who always won. But now the narrative had shifted. She was no longer the center of admiration. She was the subject of ridicule, whispers and shame. Every carefully placed connection she had built was crumbling, every false friendship unraveling at the seams, and the best part, she knew exactly who was responsible. I wasn't hiding, I wasn't running, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, wondering when the next attack would come, because Claire had no moves left to make. She had played her last card, and she had lost. Now she was left scrambling, desperately trying to salvage what little she had left. But it was too late. I could feel it happening in real time. The shifts in power, the uneasy glances she received at social gatherings. If she was even invited at all, she had been cast out no longer. The golden child no longer. The voice people trusted, and yet she still hadn't reached rock bottom. That moment came 2 weeks later. I was sitting at a cafe enjoying the first peaceful morning I had had in months, when my phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. Unknown. We need to talk. I already knew who it was before I even checked. CLA had used every other number I blocked, every mutual friend she could manipulate, but she had no allies left. I stared at the message for a long moment, debating whether I should even entertain the idea of responding, but curiosity got the best of me. About what her response came almost immediately. CLA, I lost everything. I took a sip of my coffee, waiting, let her squirm, let her sit in her own. Destruction for a moment longer. CLA, you proved your point, you won. But I need your help. I nearly laughed out loud. CLA asking me for help. The same woman who had tried to ruin my life. Frame me, strip me of my dignity, and now with no one left to manipulate, no one left to turn to. She was coming to me. I responded with the only thing that felt appropriate. You must be joking. She didn't respond for a long time. I imagined her sitting on the other end phone and hands staring at the screen, realizing that for the first time in her life, she had no control over the outcome. Finally, after several minutes, another message appeared, CLA. I don't have anywhere to go. That made me pause, as much as I hated CLA, as much as I had relished watching her empire crumble. Something about that message hit differently, not because I felt sorry for her. She had done this to herself, but because it was proof of just how much she had lost. She had been the queen of her own kingdom, the orchestrator of everyone else's misery now. Now she was just another casualty of her own games. Still, I wasn't about to let her guilt me into anything me. That's not my problem this time. She didn't hesitate, for I know, but I don't know what else to do. I sighed, setting my phone down for a moment. Part of me wanted to ignore her entirely, to let her wallow in the mess she had created. But another part of me, the part that had spent too much time being the bigger person, wanted to hear her out. Not to help, but to watch her unravel. So I did something I never thought I would. I agreed to meet her. I found her sitting in the corner of a near-empty diner. Her once pristine appearance disheveled her. Usually sharp eyes, dull and tired. It was a sight I never imagined I would see. Claire defeated, she looked up when I approached, her expression unreadable. You actually came. I slid into the seat across from her, folding my arms. I was curious. She let out a dry laugh, curious about how far I've fallen. I didn't answer. She already knew. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. I thought I could fix it. I thought if I just explained things, people would believe me. I tilted my head. Explain what that you tried to ruin me and got caught. Her jaw tightened. That's not. She stopped herself, exhaling. Yeah, I guess that's exactly what happened. I leaned forward slightly. So tell me, Claire, why am I here? She looked down at her hands, fingers twisting nervously. I need a place to stay. I blinked, then I laughed loud. Claire winced but didn't protest. I shook my head. Let me get this straight. You spent months trying to tear me down. You humiliated me on my wedding night. You manipulated your own brother into turning against me, and now you want me to help you. Her gaze dropped. I don't deserve your help. No, I said, my voice sharp. You don't, she nodded slowly, pressing her lips together. But I don't have anywhere else to go. I studied her, searching for any kind of deception. But there was none. She wasn't playing a game this time. He had truly lost everything, and for the first time since this entire ordeal began, I saw CLA for what she really was. Not powerful, not in control, not the invincible force I had once believed her to be. She was just pathetic. I leaned back, shaking my head. CLA, I spent too long letting you have power over me. I let you dictate how I felt, how I saw myself, but not anymore. Her fingers curled into fists. I'm not asking you to forgive me, good, I said. Because I don't, a flash of pain crossed her face, but she masked it quickly. Then what happens now? I exhaled, standing up. You figure it out on your own. Her eyes widened slightly, as if she had still held on to some tiny shred of hope that I would cave, that I would feel sorry enough to help her. But I didn't, because CLA needed to learn what it was like to live with the consequences of her actions. I placed a few bills on the table to cover her coffee, then turned to leave as I reached the door. She called out, wait. I paused but didn't turn. Around when did you decide? She asked softly, that you weren't going to be the bigger person. I thought about that for a moment. Then I glanced over my shoulder. The night you tried to ruin me. She looked down, nodding to herself. Fair enough. I walked out without another word, the weight of years of manipulation, anger, and resentment finally lifting from my shoulders. The tables had turned and I was never looking back. Walking out of that diner, I felt lighter than I had in months. CLA was no longer my problem. The power she once held over me had crumbled, reduced to nothing but desperate pleas and hollow regrets. But I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. I had one, not because I had exposed her, not because she had lost everything, but because I had finally freed myself from her influence for the first time in a long time. I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next attack. I wasn't replaying moments in my head, wondering if I could have done something differently. I wasn't tied to the past. Anymore, I was free. But CLA was living in the ruins of the life she had so carefully built. It didn't take long for the final pieces to fall, with no home, no reputation, and no one left to manipulate. She tried to pick up the scraps of what remained. She attempted to reach out to people, but doors kept closing in her face. Employers didn't want to be associated with the scandal, friends were too afraid of the backlash, and her own family had washed their hands of her entirely. She had always relied on influence, on knowing the right people, saying the right things, and controlling the narrative. But now no one was willing to listen. And then there was Jake. I had expected him to fade into the background after everything, to move on, rebuild his life without me, but instead, he did the one thing I never thought he would. He started to regret at first. His messages were simple apologies, half-hearted attempts to explain, but I ignored them. I didn't need closure from him. I had found it on my own then one evening. My phone rang. His name flashed across the screen. I stared at it for a long moment before deciding to pick up. Hello. There was silence on the other end, then a quiet sigh. You actually answered. I leaned against my kitchen counter, watching the city lights flicker outside my window. What do you want, Jake? Another pause. I want to say I'm sorry. I let out a slow breath. For what exactly? For everything he said, for not standing up for you, for not seeing it sooner. I shook my head. You saw it, Jake. You just didn't care enough to do anything about it. He didn't argue that was new. I thought I was protecting my family, he admitted after a long pause. I thought if I kept the peace, everything would be fine. I was wrong. CLA wasn't protecting us, she was controlling us. I exhaled, shaking my head. And it took losing me to figure that out. He swallowed, I guess. So the sadness in his voice was real, but it didn't move me the way it once would have. There was a time when I would have given anything to hear those words, to know that he regretted how he had treated me, but now they were just empty. Echoes of a past I had already walked away from. I don't know what you want me to say, Jake, I said finally. He let out another slow breath. I wanted to talk, to see if there was any chance there isn't silence. Then a quiet chuckle. Yeah, I figured. I closed my eyes for a moment, then straightened. You made your choice, Jake, and so did I know. His voice was soft. I wish I had been better. I nodded, even though he couldn't see it. Me too. And with that, I hung up. The past was finally where it belonged. Behind me, the next few months were a blur of change. I moved into a new apartment, started a job. I actually loved and surrounded myself with people who truly cared about me. People who didn't make me feel like I had to prove my worth just to be accepted. Remained by my side, a constant reminder of the friendships that had endured through everything. I still think you should have let me expose CLA on a bigger scale, she teased one night over drinks. She deserved worse, I smirked, taking a sip of my cocktail. She destroyed herself. That's enough for me. And it was for the first time in years. I wasn't living in someone else's shadow. I wasn't fighting to be seen or respected. I had reclaimed my life. Claire, on the other hand, was still trying to pick up the pieces. Last, I heard she had taken a job far from home, starting over in a place where no one knew her name. And Jake, he was still stuck in the mess he had helped create. But none of that mattered anymore, because I was finally living for me, and it felt incredible. Months passed, and the storm that had once consumed my life faded into a distant memory. The drama, the betrayal, the heartbreak. It all felt like something from a different lifetime. I had rebuilt myself from the ground up, carving out a new life that was mine and mine alone. There were no whispers behind my back, no glances filled with judgment, no invisible shackles keeping me tied to a family that never wanted me in the first place. I had won. But some victories aren't meant to be celebrated with confetti and champagne. Some are quiet. More personal. Mine came in the form of peace. Peace that CLA would never know. Peace that Jake would spend the rest of his life chasing but never truly find. Because while I had moved on, They were still trapped in the wreckage of their own making. I knew this because despite my silence, they still tried to reach me. Jake's messages became less frequent, but no less desperate. He was struggling, his words laced with regret, each text an attempt to rewrite the past. Jake, I miss you, Jake. I made a mistake. Jake, can we talk just once? I never responded. CLA, on the other hand, had gone radio silent for months. That was until one evening when a single message from an unknown number appeared on my screen. CLA, you won. Are you happy now? I stared at the words for a long time, debating whether or not I should reply. Did I owe her an answer? Did she even deserve one? Maybe not, but after everything she had put me through, I wanted the last word. I didn't wait. You lost. It was the truth. I had never set out to destroy. CLA, I hadn't needed to. She had done that all on her own. She had been the architect of her own downfall. Brick by brick, lie by lie. And in the end, there was no one left to blame but herself. She didn't reply. I hadn't expected her to. But I knew she had read it, I knew she had felt it, and that was enough. A few days later, I received another message, this time from Jake's mother. Jake's mother, I never apologized. I should have believed you. That one surprised me. Not because I had expected her to remain loyal to CLA forever, but because I had assumed she would never admit she was wrong. She had always carried herself with a quiet sort of authority, the kind that made people believe she could do no wrong. But now, after seeing what CLA was truly capable of, even she couldn't deny the truth. I considered my response carefully before typing you should have, but I don't. Should have. Need your apology, Oleg? It was true. I had spent so much of my life seeking validation from people who were never going to give it to me, but I didn't need it anymore. Not from her, not from Jake, not from anyone. I was free. And they were the ones left haunted by the past. The irony wasn't lost on me. Claire had once accused me of being an outsider, of never truly belonging in their world. And in the end, she was the one who had been cast out. Jake had once promised me forever, and now he was the one alone, poetic justice at its finest. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker against the night sky, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. I had spent so much time fighting battles I never should have had to fight, proving my worth to people who were never going to see it. But that was the past, the future that belonged to me. So I took a deep breath, deleted the last of their messages, and set my phone down for the first time in a long time. I felt truly, completely at peace. And no, not Claire, not Jake, not anyone could ever take that away from me again.